In this video, I'll be sharing with you a tutorial on how to cut and sew this stylish Bubu dress with strap. So if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button. Let's dive right into today's video. Now for this dress, I have about 6 yards of fabric, but I ended up using about 3 yards or 3.5. Now to start, I'm going to cut out my required length. So I'll cut out both the front and the back together. So if you notice, I'm placing the front and the back together. We're going to cut it out together, and the total length of my dress is 59 inches. I included ½ inch at the upper part for joining allowance, and then 1.5 inches also for the folding allowance. Now to start, you're going to go ahead to mark out ½ inch on top, which will serve as your starting line. So now what I did was just to cut out my ankara and fold it into two. You know how your ankara is by 45 inches of length, so I cut out 3 yards by 45 and I folded it into two. Now I'll mark my shoulder, the shoulder of the person I'm making the dress for. Then I'll add a sleeve length of 12 inches. Now after that, I'll add extra 2 inches to this pattern, which I will be folding it out as the folding allowance. From there, I went down by 1 inch and I'll start connecting. But before connecting, I'll mark a basic neckline of 3 inches, and I'll mark 1 inch, which is for the back neckline. Remember, I'm cutting both the front and the back together, and I'll just draw out the curve for the neckline for the back, then measure about 7.5 inches and place my ruler, and I'll connect for the neckline for the front as well. So now after connecting, I'm going to go ahead to connect from that neckline all the way to that 1 inch at the end of the sleeve length. Now I'll just go ahead and connect this. So after I'm done connecting, you're going to mark how open you want your sleeve to be. So I want to use around 11 inches plus extra 1 inch for joining, which will make it 12 inches. Now I'll go ahead to place my ruler and connect at that point. So from here, I'll come in a bit. Now the next step you need to take is to mark your measurement. Now I'm going to mark the person's hip measurement divided by 4, and I'll add extra 4 inches. So for this Bubu gown, actually what you need is the hip circumference plus extra 6 inches, right? Now I'm adding 4 inches because this person doesn't want her own Bubu to be as big as that of the actual dress. She wants something that is not way too big, so I just decided to use 4 inches. Now if you're going for exactly what we have on the thumbnail, which is quite big on the free size, what you do is to add your hip circumference divided by 4, and then you go ahead to add extra 6 inches to that line. Now you take this measurement starting from the upper part to the lower part of your pattern, right? So after I'm done marking this to the end of my pattern paper, I'm going to start from the upper part. Now I'm going to draw like a curve, just like when you're marking your kimono or your Bubu dress. Now place my ruler, and I'm going to go ahead to connect this all the way to the lower part, following the lines that I marked already. Now after connecting this, we are now going to go ahead to cut this out. Now for the pocket, I'm going to go ahead to place my tape and mark the person's shoulder to waistline, and I'll just come down a bit by extra 1 inch or 2 inches from this side. Now this is because the person I'm making this dress for is quite tall. Now if you're making it for someone on the moderate side, you can go ahead to measure 18 inches from there and then mark your pocket. So the pocket is 7 inches wide. Starting from that point to the other end is 7 inches wide, and my pocket is a bit shorter, so I'll go ahead to complete it much later. Now what I'll do first is to go ahead to cut out the neckline of the back and front together. Now after I'm done cutting that out, I will now raise one up and cut out the one that I'll be using for the front. So this is what I have, and after this I will now chop out the excess I have on top, leaving ½ inch, which will be serving as the joining allowance. Now I will now go ahead to cut out the side of my dress. When I'm tracing out the sides of my skirt, I'm going to pay attention to the pocket and not to chop it out. So you see how I'm cutting it out. I'll go ahead to cut out this other side, and I will go ahead to replace it. So the size of a pocket is about 7 inches by 10, so I'm trying to like replace it so that it will get to the actual length. Now I'm just going to go ahead to place my my tape, and I'm going to make sure that I have about 10 inches, and then I'll add extra ½ inch to it just for stitching allowance, and I'll create a curve. Now this is what I have on this point. Now I'm going to be joining the rest of my fabric to create my facing. For the facing at the front of this dress, I'll fold this into two. So I want to join the pieces of the fabric I have. Now I'll go ahead to weave it much later, and I'll be using a hemming gum to attach it round to the neckline. But if you don't want to do that, you can still just weave it and leave it inside your dress. It totally depends on what you want to do. Now I'm going to go ahead to place it this way, and after placing it, I'll go ahead to trace out the neckline of this dress. After tracing out the neckline, I'll also go ahead to work on that of the back. Now I'm going to open this up this way, and I'll open this. Now I'll take the right side of the facing the right side of the right part of the material, and I'll stitch the neckline with ½ inch. Now I'll bring over the back pattern of this dress, and I'm going to go ahead to also cut out the facing. First I'll have to fold it over this way, bring this part. Now when you're placing your facing, you need to make sure that the shoulder of the facing at the front and the shoulder of the facing at the back, they meet. Now I'm just going to place my fabric and make sure it matches before I can go ahead to cut this out. Now for the facing or at the back, you can go ahead to leave it blockish this way, or you can just trace it out. After tracing your round neckline, you can go ahead to trace out like a circle, or you can leave it in a block form here. Now I'll go ahead to turn up the neckline, and I'll be bringing it to join. Now this is the front. After joining, I'll go ahead to notch it very well so that it's going to relax. Now after I'm done notching, I'm going to go ahead to flip it in. Now before going ahead to like iron it out, probably add a hemming gum to attach it to the fabric permanently, I'll go ahead to weave the joining I have at the front part of the facing. Now I'll also notch this part. Just like I said, you can go ahead to trace it to have a roundish facing at the back, or you can just leave it this way, and I'll go ahead to iron this out. Next, I'll be joining the front shoulder and the back shoulder with ½ inch. Now I'll stitch to the end of the sleeve, and after stitching to this end, I will now go ahead to fold my sleeve with ½ and 1 inch round. Now I'll also stitch this side, the shoulder of this part, and then I'll fold off the sleeve area of this dress. That is the end of the sleeve. I'll go ahead to fold it out. Now after I'm done folding it, I'm going to go ahead to like show you what I have. So I went ahead to iron it out, and this is what I have now. I'm done folding. Now I'll go ahead to turn this to the wrong side. Now start stitching with ½ inch, following this all the way towards the pocket, and I'll go in with ½ inch. Now going down to the lower part, I'll go ahead to stop at 15 inches. So after stopping there, I'm going to make a mark there. So if you stitch, you can stitch with ½ inch or 1 inch at the side. Now I'll go ahead to fold the sides of my slits open. Now after that, I'll repeat the same thing at the side of this dress, stitch it with 1/2 inch, and after stitching, well, I'll measure about 15 inches. Now this 15 is not a standard, it depends on how open you want it. You can use within 15 to 20 inches. Now after that, I'll move over to folding the lower part of this dress. Now after I'm done folding it, this is my bias strip. Now you need at least 2 yards for each line of these strips that you'll be attaching. But I'm making this dress for an elderly person, and she doesn't really want the strap to be flowing by the side, and she just wants the strap to be at the front part of the dress. So what I'll do is just to place about 1 yard on each line. But if not, if you're making it for your client, please go ahead to like use 2 yards on each strap. So totally you'll be using like 4 yards for the front for your velvet bias, and for the back you will still use the same 4 yards. Now I'm placing this line or strap immediately after the opening I have by the side of my dress. Now I'll run a stitch on it and top stitch. So if you notice, I pinned it so that it won't be moving when I'm stitching. Next, I'll place the second layer or the second line, which I'll be leaving like 2 inches or 1.5 before placing the other one. So after that, I'll go ahead to attach this here. So this is optional, and after I'm done stitching, this is the final look of the dress. If you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please kindly hit on the subscribe button.